All right, welcome back. The fallout, the criticism, the observations about what happened last night in Chicago at a Donald Trump expected rally that ultimately ended up being postponed. And now today, Donald Trump himself responding, tweeting this: the organized group of people, many of them thugs who shut down our First Amendment rights in Chicago, have totally energized America. And then he just spoke just moments ago. You saw it live right here from Vandalia, Ohio, calling those protesters organized and a disgrace. Let's talk more about what happened, the chaotic scene in Chicago. What a contrast to that hanger shot there of a Donald Trump with his Trump Force One as the backdrop there. CNN political commentator and Washington correspondent for The New Yorker, Ryan Lizza, political science professor and politics editor for TheRoot.com, Jason Johnson, and CNN senior Washington correspondent, Jeff Zeleny. All right, good to see all of you. So, Jeff, let me begin with you. You were there last night in Chicago. How did these events unfold? How did it get to the point that it got?
Well, Fredricka, it should have been not a big surprise, actually, because online in the days leading up to this event, there were organized protests, people saying come outside to protest Mr. Trump, and also inside. So, I mean, I think that we have a couple different things. One, inside, things got quite rowdy. They got very rowdy. People were confronting one another. I was outside the rally, and I can tell you the protests really represented the diverse tapestry that is Chicago and that is America. I mean, we saw black and white, Hispanic and Asian, young and old. A lot of people brought their families. So people outside the event really were trying to send Donald Trump a message that his rhetoric is not welcome in the city of Chicago. Now, inside it definitely was confrontational, but you really have to raise the question of why the Trump campaign was coming into the heart of the city of Chicago, a Democratic city, to have a rally like this. Of course, he can have a rally any place he wants, but this is a very diverse university, a diverse campus. It's not his base or his crowd at all. That is why we're seeing a different view from last night versus today in Ohio.
All right. And of course, all the other candidates are talking about what happened. This was Ted Cruz just a moment ago talking about his observation, what he sees as a reflection of the culture of a campaign.
It's sad, number one, that you have protesters that resort to violence, that resort to threats of violence, that resort to yelling and screaming and disruption, to silence speech that they don't like. Everyone has a First Amendment right to speak, but the First Amendment does not give you the right to silence others. And we've seen, whether it is the Bernie Sanders campaign or the Black Lives Matter movement or others, we've seen some protesters that take speech into intimidation, into violence, into trying to silence anyone who might disagree with them. That is wrong. I think it is also true that any campaign, responsibility begins and ends at the top. And it is my hope that all of us can appeal to civility. All of us can carry a message of unity that brings people together, rather than seeking to divide, rather than seeking to inflame hatred. We should be bringing people together. Far more unifies us than tears us apart. Right now, all Americans are hurting. Not just Republicans, it's not just Democrats. All Americans are hurting right now, and all Americans are hurting because the Obama-Clinton economy is a disaster. Because millions of Americans are out of jobs, have seen their wages stagnate, are stuck in part-time work. Millions of Americans are scared about their future.
All right, Ted Cruz there responding to what took place involving a Donald Trump support rally last night in Chicago. Back with me now, Jeff, Ryan, and Jason. All right, so Jason, how does another contender, such as Ted Cruz, speak out about this without looking like he's opportunistic?
Well, he is opportunistic, to be honest with you, Fred. And this is disingenuous, and I hate to quote Trump here, but this is lying Ted. Okay, he's lying here when he suggests that he has a huge problem with this, because this has been going on in Donald Trump campaign for a very long time. Ted Cruz wasn't saying anything about it before until he thought that he was serious competition. And let's put this in a larger context. There have been protests at Sanders rallies, protests at Clinton rallies, protests at every single person's rallies, Republican and Democrat. You don't see anybody else's rallies turn into people getting beat up. There were people who protested George Bush in 2004. He started a war, and you didn't see people get beat up. This is uniquely problematic about Trump, and that's what these candidates should be saying, but they're still trying to appeal to his voters, so they're not being all that honest.
So Ryan, is that placement correct? While there are protests at all of the candidates' gatherings, the difference here is this one became violent and Donald Trump bears some responsibility?
Well, look, I think he does bear some responsibility, and I think it is true that that Rubio and Cruz have been a little bit late, and Kasich have been a little late to condemning this, but what they're saying yesterday and today is right. The tone of a campaign starts at the top, and the truth of the matter is when Donald Trump gets up in front of huge audiences that are taken live on cable networks and says his supporters should deck someone if they look like they're going to throw a tomato at him, that really happened, and when he says that a supporter who was beat up at one of his rallies should have been roughed up, and when he in general is very coy and declines to condemn violence, well, what do you expect? His supporters think that they have the green light to do that. And it's not just Trump, unfortunately. He sets the tone, and it's now filtered down into his campaign leadership and his people that go on TV for him. So you have Corey Lewandowski, who has allegedly grabbed Michelle Fields, a journalist, for ironically one of the most pro-Trump news organizations in the country, Breitbart, and he now has criminal charges pressed against him by Michelle Fields in Florida. He's denied that, but someone obviously grabbed her, whether it was him or a Trump security personnel. And then you have someone, so you have the guy in the cowboy hat deck a protester because he thinks he thinks this is okay. And then I've even seen on TV, Trump supporters sort of laughing about the fact that cowboy wearing the 78-year-old punched that protester. So it's infused the not just Trump, but his campaign, his supporters on TV, and his supporters in his audiences. And if he got up there and said enough was enough, I think it would change. But so far, he's been reluctant to do that. He's blaming everything on the protesters instead of himself.
And then, Jeff, from a voter's standpoint, why does it matter the sequence of events in which other contenders, the other candidates vying for this job, that they would wait until now to say something as opposed to not saying something weeks ago? Why would that matter for voters?
It matters because it's a leadership test. They're running for president of the United States of America, and presidents face all types of issues, expected and unexpected, planned and unplanned. And how a candidate responds is really a sign of what kind of leader they will be. I mean, I can't even... It's difficult to even draw a comparison to the previous presidential campaigns. This is nothing like we've seen in modern time. This is the fifth presidential campaign I've covered, and certainly the anger out there is different, but it does come from the top down. I mean, we all remember that moment in 2008 when John McCain instantly, on the spot,
you were getting ready to bring that up.
told a woman that she was wrong
right
about calling Barack Obama a Muslim. And he said, no, ma'am, she's a good American, or, he's a good American. We have differences, but he's a good American. That was an instantaneous leadership moment for John McCain.
That said something about
these other
him,
candidates have had months and months and months, and we have not heard them until when it's probably political expedient for them, for John Kasich, to say that this is wrong, and for Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz to say that. They've had a long time to do this.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much to all of you. We'll chat again. Ryan, Lizza, Jason Johnson, Jeff Zeleny. Appreciate it.